Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, what do we have in store for ourselves today? We will plunge in with what Chelsea chick, some of these names, has to say. Lady C, yes, Aurora, can you tell us anything beyond the speculation in the MSM about the goings-on behind the scenes with the Duke of Westminster's wedding? What's really going on with which royals who can and can't attend? Okay, to those of you who don't know who the Duke of Westminster is, he's young. His name is Hugh. He is extremely rich. He's worth about £10 billion. He basically is the owner of the Grosvenor estate, which is really one of the largest, if not the largest, real estate corporation in this country. It owns much of Belgravia and Mayfair, and that which it has been forced to sell off, it still has to a degree a level of control over as a result of various statutes from Parliament. This I know because I lived on the Grosvenor estate for much of my adult life. And so he is marrying a very nice young lady, and I'm going to tell you what's really interesting about not only the goings-on behind the scenes, but the point that everybody is missing in the mainstream media. Hugh Westminster is a descendant of an sub-Saharan Chadian African slave. That's right. Megsy baby, you don't get a look in. Others were there first. He's also a descendant of the Russian imperial house. But we'll get to all of that in a minute. He also is part Jewish because his grandmother, Gina Verner's father, was from a very rich South African Jewish family. No, his great grandparents, not his grandmother's father. His grandmother was Georgina Verner, and that might give you a clue, the Verner. And her mother was Lady Zia Torby, who was actually Countess Zia Torby, who when she married Verner, she became Lady Zia Verner. She was allowed to assume the rank of an earl's daughter because her mother, Sophie Countess of Merenberg, was married morganatically to Grand Duke Michael Mikhailovich, and the Tsar refused to allow the marriage on the grounds of, well, morganatic marriages were not allowed in the imperial house, but also she was a descendant of the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin, and he was a great-grandson of a Chadian slave who was a favorite of Peter the Great called Hannibal. So you get Jewish, black, and white, and royal, and aristocracy all rolled into one. Isn't it exciting? And of course, all of this has completely eluded the mainstream media because in their insufficiency, they really know so little. says I, being very catty. Well, Harry, of course, is not coming. Now, my understanding is that because Hugh is friendly with both Harry and William, because William's godmother is Hugh's mother, Tally Westminster, who was born Natalia Phillips, and her mother was Gina Verna, the part Jewish, part South African, part royal, well, really imperial as opposed to royal, son of a tremendously rich family. And indeed, Lady C and her husband, if I remember correctly, his name was Sir Harold Verner. He was Sir Julius Verner's son. And if I could be wrong, because Harold Phillips Bunny Phillips was also Gina's husband. But I really should check it, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to check it because I'm just going to wing it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm sure somebody will correct me. But they had a wonderful house called Luton Hoo, where the Queen and Prince Philip spent every wedding anniversary for decades as their guests. Because you see, Gina Verna was a cousin of Prince Philip, and Gina Verna also was mooted as a prospective wife for Prince Philip when he was Prince Philip of Greece. And she said she didn't want to marry a prince. She didn't want to be cutting ribbons. And she didn't. She married Bunny Phillips instead, who incidentally had been Edwina Mountbatten's lover. And Edwina Mountbatten, if you might recall, was Lady Louis Mountbatten, married to Prince Philip's uncle Dicky, Lord Louis Mountbatten. So I suspect you're beginning to see that the families are very interconnected, and they're even more interconnected when you think that the first Duke of Westminster's daughter, she was married to Queen Mary's brother, Prince Adolphus of Teck. So she was Princess Adolphus of Teck until 1917. Then she became the Marchioness of Cambridge. So that's the sort of family background. They're all very interconnected. Now, Tally Westminster and her late husband Gerald, who was divinely handsome, he died very young of a heart attack, but he was absolutely dropped down dead gorgeous. And he was a very talented football player, but his father refused to allow him to play football professionally. He thought it was not suitable for somebody who was going to become a duke to be a professional football player. Nowadays, it would be an absolute feather in everybody's cap. Just goes to show how the world has changed. So, where was I? Oh, yes. But Tally and Gerald Westminster were not that friendly with Charles. I mean, when Charles and Diana were first married, they were relatively friendly with them because Diana had made sure that all of Charles's old friends would not be allowed to be close to him anymore. So the Westminsters, they actually became quite good friends of Charles and Diana. But it was a more artificial construct than a natural construct. Gerald and Tally used to spend quite a lot of time with the Queen and Prince Philip as their house guests. So if you consider the background to what the press are calling a falling out, Harry has not really been allowed to go, but to save face, in situations like that, you're sent an invitation or notified of the event with the knowledge that you are expected to and will decline it. So that saves Harry's face, so to speak, because William would not have attended or accepted the invitation had Harry and Meghan been going to be there. Now, William is going to be an usher. George is most likely going to play a part in the event as well. So it's going to be quite an event. And will the King and Queen be there? The newspapers have been full of utter rubbish that the King and Queen don't want to be there because when Hugh's sister Tamara was getting married to Edward Van Cutsem, there was a huge palaver over the seating arrangements, which there was, because Charles and Camila, who were not married in those days, and this actually helped to bring about the marriage, were both asked, and Emily Van Cutsem, the groom's mother, is the one. Now, to fill you in a bit further on the background of all of this, Emily Van Cutsem used to be my neighbour when we all lived in the Cundy Street flats. I have to say I always liked her. She was always warm and personable and charming and down to earth and breezy and a very attractive personality. Her husband, slightly less so, but all right. He had met, as the king then was Prince Charles, at Cambridge, and they remained fast friends. And they had 4, if I remember correctly, gorgeous-looking sons. I mean, I think if they walked into the room, I'd most likely still recognize them. They were really nice boys, very good-looking, but I mean, not my age group, hello, that's the end of it. But Emily I really liked Emily. But if you listen to her sister, oh dear, there has been a massive falling out between the sisters. According to her sister Wilhelmina, who sued her for years, their father left a 3-way split between the 3 daughters, £35 million in a trust in Switzerland. And this has been the subject of litigation, by the way, so I'm not telling tales out of school. Emily moved it because she was the executrix. She, unbeknownst to Wilhelmina or the other sister Christina, took it upon herself to remove the trust from Switzerland to Liechtenstein beyond anybody's control but hers. And then they didn't get a look in. Well, somebody who knows Wilhelmina said to me, ages ago actually, when we were talking about this, they said, Emily may appear to be charming and all the rest of it, but she is a shark, and don't try to swim in her waters. So, well, she, as the mother of the groom, had a very little say supposedly in the wedding between her son Edward and Tamara, who was Tally and Gerald's daughter. But I was told that Emily is the one who said, oh, no, we can't have Camilla seated with Charles because the Queen is coming, and the Queen did go to the marriage, as did William and Harry, and we can't have it, and it will offend my Catholic sensibilities, because she's very Catholic. So Catholic that she nurses the trust fund in an inaccessible state. And Tally went along with it. So it caused huge, huge upsets. Now, in fairness to what I was told about Tally, is that she didn't particularly care one way or the other, but she went along with it partly to oblige her daughter's future mother-in-law, with the knowledge that Emily and Hugh were very close friends of Charles. And Emily had been something of an aunt, in quotes, or as people would say nowadays, an auntie, to William and Harry, especially after Diana died. They used to spend a lot of time with Emily, and they loved staying with the Van Cutsems. But it caused a degree of ire where Camilla was concerned. If she refused to go to the wedding, if she wasn't being seated with Charles, and Charles didn't go to the wedding either. And the press are speculating that there's still some bad feeling. My understanding is there's no bad feeling. It's all water under the bridge. And Camilla is not somebody to hold a grudge. Her attitude is least said, soonest mended, and let's get on with life and trying to be as happy and positive as possible. So I hope that answers the question. I think the press are making a more of certain things than they need to, because they're looking at the cuttings files. They're not really keeping their finger on the pulse with what's happened in the last however many years. I mean, they've been married for years now. So that marriage took place before Charles and Camilla's. That should tell you how long ago it was. And it's one of the things that forced the Queen's hand and made her agree to the marriage. So I don't know why Camila would still be upset over something that actually worked out to her advantage. And she's not the sort of person in any event that I'm reliably informed to hold grudges. So there we go. Peace Forever says, Lady C, I must congratulate you. You're always saying you're not a fortune teller, but right after the Hamas attack on Israel in October, you stated that Hamas had committed an atrocity and that Israel would respond in kind. The ICC has just issued arrest warrants for both the Hamas and Israeli leaders. I'd be very interested to hear your comment on this development. Well, yes. Karim Khan KC, who is a chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court, has applied for arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, for war crimes. Also caught up in the fray is the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh, as well as the group's military chief Mohammed Deif. All of them are going to be arrested if they can be caught as war criminals, and all of them will be tried for war crimes. I'm not a fortune teller, and it was obvious what was going to happen because, you don't need to be a fortune teller. All you need to understand is that character is destiny, and that don't expect this fish to fly in the air like a fowl, because it's not going to. And the law is very clear on the matter. And it was obvious from what I was hearing from Israel that Netanyahu was going to behave exactly as he has behaved. And there is talk in Israel that Netanyahu's objective has been to clear out Gaza, to create the Ben Gurion Canal, and that he would end up being so covered in honor within Israel that the Israeli judiciary, which aims to try him for various criminal offenses already, would have to keep their hands off him. Well, let us wait and see what happens, because I actually think it's a very good thing that they've all been charged. I think they all deserve to be charged. And, I also am very concerned, as somebody who's part Jewish, who has Jewish cousins and Jewish friends, that some people have not understood that this is not about Jews. Jews should be allowed to walk around, even in Palestinian demonstrations, with their yarmulkes. Many Jews support a state of Palestine. So there's a lot of confusion in the West, and I now speak as somebody who is partly Middle Eastern, partly Lebanese, partly Jewish, and people in the West just don't understand that grey is neither black nor white. It is a combination of the two. And you do not, except at your peril, decide that grey is either black or white. I want to see this situation brought to as quick a halt as possible. It does Jewry all over the world no good. And it is a massive injustice to people who have been deprived of their state for 75 years. In my opinion, and I don't care who doesn't agree with me, there is no other solution but a two-state solution forcibly imposed upon those who do not wish to have it, and then policed internationally until such time as the temperature cools down. There's no other alternative. The alternative is totally unacceptable to anybody who has any sense of fair play or justice or humanity. One human being is not better than another. And one human being isn't worth 10 or 1,000 of another. Yes, some of us may be more productive than others, but before God, we are all his children and we are all equal. And on that note, I'm going to move on to something rather less troubling, but we are going to get to Harry and Meghan after we have touched upon Nancy Pelosi. Robin Tomlin says, Lady C, Pelosi's comments were in reference to the Electoral College, an archaic method used that the majority doesn't always win. The presidential race ends up being controlled by a few swing states. Which means those states determine the election by how many electors the candidate that has the most votes in a state wins. All the electors. So all go to that candidate. Must get 270 to win. All states have electors based on population. Thank you for that. I am very aware of the Electoral College. I am very aware of the reason for the Electoral College. And the reason for the Electoral College is simple. America, the United States of America, is not one entity. It is a conglomeration of several different states, each of which is theoretically equal to the other. If you did not have the Electoral College or some other system that is akin to the handicap system used in thoroughbred racing, where horses are weighted according to their handicaps, they are given weights, W-E-I-G-H-T-S, not W-A-I-T-S. There needs to be some equalizing system. Otherwise, California and New York would be constantly electing who they wanted, and nobody else would have a look in. That's the reason for the Electoral College. That is the reason for the system that is checks and balances, weights and measures. there could be another system, but it would have to be a system that chose to achieve the same result. Why should people in Wyoming or Washington State or Oregon or Virginia or Florida always be dominated by the voters in California and New York? It's first past the post in each state. It's not all everybody first past the post. Each state has its own laws. Each state has its own rules and regulations. And unless you change what is effectively the federal system to make it a one-state country, you are stuck with something that requires that the less populous regions are given as loud a voice as the more populous regions. It's as simple as that. I hope that answers the question, or indeed actually addresses the comment, would be a better way of putting it. Marsha Bass says, so Meghan with a big smile was greeted and flown around by a wanted fugitive and money launderer, wanted in the US. She is really trying hard and to outrun that headline with all kinds of BS here in the United States. It's hilarious how Karma is kicking her. Well, Marsha Bass, I'm delighted that Karma is visiting Meghan. And my understanding is, incidentally, that she and Harry are on the total outs. She is spitting bricks that Harry has caused all of this. Of course, poor Harry hasn't caused any of it. It's her machinations and her motivations for billionaire status that are causing all of this. But Megsy Baby's never going to take responsibility for anything because Megsy Baby's perfect. But I understand that poor Harry has been put through the ringer. Poor H. But I suppose if you sup with the devil and do it with a short spoon, don't be surprised if you get burnt, at least singed. But in fairness to Meghan, the Nigerian airline Air Peace, which was founded by Dr. Alan Onyema, who is wanted as a fugitive for money laundering and fraud to the tune of $20 million in the US. It's a large airline in Nigeria. It flies into Gatwick. It flies all over the place. The trip was organized by the Nigerian defense team. So I think it was the chief of the defense staff who not only issued the invitation, but dictated, to his underlings to make sure that everything went smoothly and that everybody was satisfied and happy. And yes, it's deeply regrettable that Dr. Onyema has been charged in the US, but I don't know whether the charges are true and fair or not, because I have to tell you, as a Brit, I have now become very aware of the United States charging several Britons with all sorts of crimes that are not crimes anywhere else but in some back office in some obscure attorney general's office in one of the American states. So I am going to keep an open mind on this. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to blame Meghan and Harry because they didn't organize it. And I'm sure that if Dr. Onyema wishes to enter into a professional relationship with them, gimme, 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 me, gay, me. I gotta be, gimme. However, that's not the only one of the dignitaries, let's put it that way, who has run foul of the law in America, and the king who ran afoul of the law in America, incidentally, was married to a Jamaican. Her name is Chanel Chin. I'm afraid I don't know the family. Oh, sorry. Not my sort of Jamaican, but very pretty girl. And she had a terrible time with him. And she has nothing but complaints about him and the way he discarded her. But his present wife is a very beautiful woman. Her name is Queen Firdaus, I think is how it might be pronounced. So he certainly has good taste in women. His name is, and I'm going to have to look it up because I'm afraid I'm not very adept on these Nigerian names. His name is, he is the Oluwo of Iwo. In the press they're saying of Iwo land. It's not. He is the Oluwo of Iwo. His name is Oba Abdul Rashid Adewale Akanbi. He's 56 years old. He is the Oluwo of Iwo. And he took center stage. After the previous king, who is the Obi of Onitsha, had endowed Meghan with the title of Adamazi, daughter of an aristocrat. Well, actually, Thomas Markle, believe it or not, does have aristocratic ancestry. That's right. Can you believe it? He does. Doria doesn't, but he does. Anyway, so I suppose the Obi of Onitsha was making absolutely sure that everybody knew that Meghan was Thomas Markle's daughter when he endowed her with daughter of an aristocrat, otherwise known as Adamazi. Then in hopped the Oluwo of Iwo, who grabbed the microphone and turned to Meghan and said, "Thank God you are one of us." Well, that she certainly is. because both of them know how to work their way around things. And he has certainly worked his way around things to the extent that he has been tried twice, been jailed and deported twice. First time he was deported for committing a fraud and jailed, then kicked out. Then he went to Canada. Then he snuck back into the United States under an alias, was caught, jailed again, and booted out and deported a second time. So, I think you could say that he's somebody that Bill Simmons would call an effing grifter, don't you? Says I'd be really naughty. Bad me. And now, Adrian Walker says, Joseph Goebbels had a pretty comprehensive propaganda machine, didn't he? I wouldn't say it was successful in the long term, though. History has judged the NSDAP regime to be amongst the most vicious and depraved in history. Hopefully, the same will prove to be the case for Meghan and Harry, no matter the number of documentaries they produce. They are relying upon their own talents, whereas Goebbels had the likes of Leni Riefenstahl, who was a top-notch, cutting-edge, innovative, and extremely talented filmmaker, incidentally also Jewish. Yet, despite her undoubted talent, the historical legacy is the polar opposite of what Goebbels and Hitler desired. I'm going to stop right there and interject and make the point. The reason why is that ultimately constructiveness will prevail over destructiveness. It may take time, but it will. Or to put it another way, good will conquer evil. Maybe a bit of a struggle, maybe a hell of a struggle, but it will usually ultimately, because if evil defeated good, ultimately there could be no continuation of the world or of life or of the natural order. The natural order is for good to prevail. I think it's really important that we all acknowledge and recognize that fact. So to continue, I think that Meghan and Harry will quickly be consigned to the dustbin of history, if only because their product is so utterly banal, tedious, and completely without any artistic merit whatsoever, not to mention being mostly a tissue of lies, and easily debunked lies at that. And I have to tell you, Adrian Walker, I commend you. I think you have summarized things absolutely brilliantly, and you have been completely accurate, because Meghan and Harry, their bad behavior is memorable. The fact that they get everything so gloriously wrong, even when they get some things right, ultimately it's all a cock-up, is what people remember. They have no talent except for creating havoc. And ultimately, mess is not as memorable as order. If mess were as memorable as order, mess wouldn't remain a mess. But order, turning order out of chaos, is what is constructive and becomes memorable. I couldn't agree more. Dio van Lestat says, nothing dramatic will happen until after the UK elections. The UK public and politicians are waiting for that. Nobody worries about Harry's wife. Big constitutional changes in the House of Lords may remove Harry's titles easily, could even see Parliament demand those in the line of succession reside either in the UK or a Commonwealth nation. Dio van Lestat, I couldn't agree more. That's a very perceptive remark that you have made. It is absolutely right. This country is in sufficient of a mess with all that's going on politically and economically for us to, as a nation, and for the government to divert its attention away from mischief, from important things, to correct the antics of mischief makers, because any correction will require pro and con, push and pull, those who support it and those who don't. It will be controversial, whatever happens, if and when it happens. We don't need the distraction. We have more important things on our plate. We also have a king who's battling cancer, a Princess of Wales who's battling cancer. We have a king who's trying to get his act together and live his life to the fullest of his possibilities, which he is doing pretty splendidly. I'll get to the Princess of Wales in a while. But we have too much on our plates as a nation for us to be distracted by any resolution. Also, things are not bad enough yet. They need to get worse, because major changes to the way the monarchy functions will only be desirable overall in response to a major event. The last time it happened with any great consequence was in 1917, when the king changed the name of the dynasty and stripped all of the royals of their right to use their German titles in this country, and stripped all of the German royals who had British titles of their titles. That was 3 years into a world war. Harry and Meghan are not of the magnitude of a world war. So, Mimi Banales says, can you comment on Kate? There's lots of weird news coming out. Don't listen to a thing. It's all utter rubbish. I'm not even going to condescend to repeat some of the ridiculous and truly bizarre offences to anyone's intelligence that are being mooted. I mean, they're just beyond preposterous. Anybody who puts herself in Catherine's position will understand she doesn't have the strength to be parading around in public. And if she parades around in public every few weeks, it's after a week or so, people are going to say, where is she? She's made it clear she's having chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is exhausting. And we don't need to go into all the reasons why a good-looking woman who values her dignity and values being favorably regarded sartorially and tonsorially wants to keep out of the public eye. It's really simple. And until such time as she is able to present herself on a footing that she wants, she should not be expected to wheel herself out every few weeks to defeat the rumours of the scandal mongers. That's my take on it. I don't know what you think, but I'd be interested to know. And on that note, I'd say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be addressing. Okay? Thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.